Today, I'm interviewing Heather Coleman, a mother of two children who experienced a postpartum psychosis episode 4 months after giving birth to her second child. In the midst of her psychotic episode, she was found running naked along the highway. My interview with her will tell you about her touching story, her recovery process, and how this whole experience has impacted her. Hi, Heather.
Hi, Genevieve.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Very good. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for accepting to do this interview with me.
Of course, of course.
So, to start, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am a mother of two. I have a son and a daughter, ages 13 and 11, and I'm married. I live outside Washington, D.C., in a suburb in Maryland. I have a full-time job, currently working on the Marriott International website, so web content strategist developer. And I actually grew up in Vermont.
Okay.
Spent the first 22 years of my life there, graduated from college, and then obviously moved to the DC, Maryland area after that.
Okay. Yeah, so I wanted to interview you because I know that you've been through, in 2008, you experienced a postpartum psychotic episode 4 months after giving birth to your second child. Can you explain the symptoms you experienced and what happened?
Okay. Well, like you said, it was after the birth of my second child, which was my daughter. I did not experience any postpartum issues, anxiety, depression, any major issues with the birth of my first child. But after my daughter was born, I took less time off from work. I took 12 weeks with my son and only 8 weeks with my daughter. At the time, I had a very long commute, approximately an hour and a half to 2 hours one way. I had a very difficult manager. So there's a lot of stressful scenarios going on in my life at that time. Looking back, the symptoms I think were more obvious, but as they were happening, I didn't recognize them, and I don't think anyone around me necessarily recognized them.
I see.
Some of them seemed sort of positive. I was more talkative than normal. I had all these ideas that were coming to me. I think the biggest symptom that should have been recognized was not a need for sleep, which was not a normal thing for me. I enjoyed sleep. Obviously, with a newborn, that's not the easiest thing, but I would wake up in the middle of the night and have to jot down ideas that I was having in a little journal. So many ideas coming through my head, I had to write things down.
Know what it is. I've had that too.
Right. And my husband afterwards noticed, that was sort of a significant symptom because I would get up very early in the morning. It was 2008 was leading up to a presidential election in the United States, and I became very focused on the candidates and what was going on, and so I created sort of ways to register to vote because I was living in a new housing development, and I went around at like 5 in the morning and put them in the newspaper mailboxes of all my neighbors to encourage them to vote, which was, again, not like me, not normal, typical behavior for me. And this basically culminated on a Friday. A coworker of mine, her mother had passed away, and they were having a funeral service for her, which was a Catholic funeral service. I've always considered myself atheist or agnostic, and I was not going to attend the actual funeral, but more of the reception afterwards. And that morning, suddenly I felt as though God was talking to me and telling me that I should attend the service. And it was did not seem abnormal for me to have those thoughts. It was
Mm-hmm.
sort of subtle, but at the same time, it did not seem as though it was a very any deviation from reality
Hmm.
that I was having those thoughts.
Seems very real to you.
That seemed very normal, seemed very real. I started then having what I like to call all these connections in my mind.
Hmm.
Like when you start looking on Wikipedia and you click a link and it takes you to another topic, another story, and it's like everything is connected and makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That was happening in my brain
Hmm.
that morning. And again, didn't seem to be anything out of the ordinary for me.
Hmm.
So I let my husband know that I would go to the funeral service. And while I was there, it was called the Church of the Little Flower. And I thought that was significant to me because I have a flower name and my daughter has a flower name. And of course, the service was talking all about the role of the mother. And I thought, they're speaking directly to me.
Oh,
this
yeah.
whole thing is about me.
Hmm.
At one point, when they asked people to go up and take communion,
Mm-hmm.
Catholic service, I was, again, felt like God told me I should go up and do that.
Hmm.
So, not an appropriate thing. I'm not baptized. I'm not a religious. I've never done that before. So that was something I did, and it did not seem, again, out of the norm.
Mm-hmm.
I did not trigger anything in my head to say, why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
and the thing is that too, like, why I hear a lot the stories I've read about psychosis, that religious thinking that is very, very common. It happened to me, but I am a believer, like I'm religious, so it
mhm.
was not exceptional or something like that. But for you, you would think that you would have
I would think that
recognized it. Yeah.
but again, it seemed very normal,
Hmm.
and it just made sense. And so that's what I did. And I ended up going back to work. I finished most of the day, and it was a Friday, so I said I wanted to leave early to try and beat some of the rush hour traffic in the DC area, which is horrendous on any day.
Hmm.
And I think within 5 to 10 minutes of leaving work, then my mind completely deteriorated.
Oh.
I was talking on the phone with my husband. I was saying inappropriate things, accusations to him. And I remember at one point him saying if I continued with this line of conversation that our relationship would be over.
Oh, wow.
And I don't remember exactly what I said, but it stood out enough to him at that point to recognize something was off.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I said, okay, and, hung up the phone.
Hmm.
I called 911 and told them that my husband was going to hurt my children. At that time, my children were in the care of my mother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
And the police officers actually went to their house to check that they took what I was saying as the truth.
Yeah.
And I continued with sort of a cat and mouse game by phone with my husband. I was having delusions that I was God and he was the devil.
Mm-hmm.
I was having very obsessed thoughts with the story of Adam and Eve, again, religious stories, sci-fi movies, The Fifth Element. I thought it was unique, very special. Delusions of grandeur. I thought the world was ending, that I had in some way had to save it, which could have happened in a bunch of different ways, which some of them involved violence, such as having to hurt or kill my parents, children, kill my husband. All of these things were thoughts that entered my mind at some point during this drive. I ended up not driving in the direction of where my children were or where home was. I took a detour At times I was driving in the breakdown lane with my flashers on. I thought there were helicopters overhead, that the government was trying to follow me and capture me. And I ended up stopping on a bridge. I got out of my car and I took off all my clothes and started running. I thought that I had to get into the water and be baptized, possibly to save the earth, the world, save myself. I don't really know at that point. I don't think that I was going to jump, but again, I don't know for sure. Yeah.
So did you get, like, at that point, somebody stopped and tried to help?
Yes, I was very lucky. Again, I was on a bridge in rush hour traffic in DC. I had taken off all my clothes, so I had nothing on me, and I started running. And so it was only a matter of minutes. Multiple people called 911 for me. Multiple vehicles stopped. One woman actually held my arm and restrained me from running away. And I've gotten, I obtained one or multiple 911 calls from that situation. I had also attempted to try and find a couple of people that stopped to help me that day.
Yeah.
I wanted to know what their story is, like what compelled them to stop for this random woman running on the side of the road. When a lot of people, especially these days, will say, I don't want to get involved. I don't know if this is a dangerous situation, and not think that I should stop to help someone. So I consider myself very lucky that they did stop, and I would love to say thank you to them.
Of course. Of course. So you never found them?
I have not found them.
Okay.
From the 911 calls, I found out that the gentleman's name was James.
Okay.
And it was him and his sister, and they were from Richmond. So I thought that that was a promising lead, because it was close to DC. It's like 90 minutes. But no, I've never, I keep thinking, if I just tell my story enough, that someone will hear it that may have heard their story and connect us,
Sure. Because I've read one of you talked to someone else, an article, and I know that at the end of the article, you do mention that, and I was hoping by today that would have maybe contact them or.
Yeah. I mean, that's one part of the reason that I share the story. I mean, the other part is the fact that I survived it.
Yeah.
And I consider that to be an amazing blessing. Totally. And so I think if there's anything that I can share, any detail of sharing my story that would help another woman, another family recognize the symptoms, then, and help them, that would be very rewarding to do so.
Yeah, I totally understand. That's why, too, I told my story. I wrote a book, and I'm doing this YouTube channel, too, because same thing, it was a difficult experience, and I think I've been lucky, too, in my story, because, the midwife really helped, and for me to get some support and have a diagnosis. So because of her, I was able to have good people around me to help me in my recovery.
Right.
So, but I want other women who go through something hard like that, like to say, hey, you're not alone. You're not alone.
Exactly.
I'm wondering, like, before your postpartum psychosis episode, how much did you know about postpartum mood and anxiety disorders? Because in my case, I didn't know much. So you're saying that you were having some symptoms and your husband didn't really like something was wrong at the beginning. And same thing for me, like it took a while. It took like, I don't know, a few weeks before we were like, okay, there's something wrong. We didn't know much. So how about you?
Right. I think, a couple of things that were working against us is not knowing, not having heard something similar. A lot of times when you hear, obviously, postpartum psychosis is one of the rarer scenarios that can happen. So when you do hear about it, it's some of the worst case scenarios, even though infanticide and suicide, or, a lower percentage of the women that actually survive, those are the ones that you hear about. And so did not know much, and not having experienced anything significant or severe with my son. And again, that a lot of ideas, more talkative. I'm more of an introverted person. So even coworkers noticed that I was talking more and being more assertive, but they almost saw it as a positive.
Okay.
And then looking back, they're like, oh, I should have just recognized that it was just a behavior change. And so that's the thing to look for, is behavior change, including racing thoughts, manic behavior, overly, one direction or another, whether it's up too much up, too much down, and then not needing sleep, which, as new mothers know, sleep is important, and then that's significant for any kind of psychotic episode, is the lack of sleep can affect the brain,
Yeah, and I think in my situation, that's what happened too. Like, delivery was super long, and then 2 nights in a row that I didn't sleep, and after the night at the hospital, I slept a couple hours maybe, because there was so much action in the room. I was not sleeping, so I don't know if in 3 days I got 3 hours of sleep. So I'm sure it's something that triggered, yes.
Yeah.
Did you have more to say about that?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, in my personal situation, a subsequent diagnosis after being hospitalized for 5 days and seeing both a therapist and a psychiatrist in my community, my local county, for several months after this incident, was bipolar disorder. And that's something also that I came across in Brooke Shields' book, Down Came the Rain, was that women with bipolar disorder, which I didn't know I had, can be more prone to have postpartum psychosis. And a lot of times, a lot of the research, a lot of the things you'll find online will talk about it most likely occurring in the first couple of weeks. And so for me, and I know there are other women, it could be a couple months later. For me, it was 4 months later.
Yeah.
And that is still in the category or the realm of a psychotic episode with postpartum features. So, and I had just started to wean more from pumping after my return to work. And of course, when you wean and slow down on breastfeeding, that's another hormonal change.
Yes.
Not all women are informed about or think about. You think about the immediate childbirth as being the most hormonal change, but breastfeeding, slowing of breastfeeding can be another hormonal change. And obviously for me now, menopause could be another point to be very aware of what's going on with my mental health.
So you talked a little bit about your recovery process. So like, what kind of support has been the most helpful for you, like during your recovery?
So in the immediate days afterwards, hours, I was taken to an emergency room at a hospital in DC. My husband had joked, I have sense of humor has always been important to me, and that was one of my fears when I was in the psychiatric hospital, is that medication would make me lose my sense of humor.
Oh, okay.
So it was, months, years afterwards, looking back on certain things and finding humor in certain situations. And so my husband has often joked that I should have run the other way into Maryland versus DC. I would have been taken to a better hospital.
Oh.
But obviously not something that was, right at the top of mind at that moment. But so I went to the emergency room. I think I told them that my name was Mary, that I was, impregnated by God. I gave them a middle name, which is also Marie, which is close.
Okay.
So some of the hospital bills would have my middle name instead of my first name. I can remember still, I think, having delusions. I was speaking in Spanish.
Oh.
Yes. I mean, I studied Spanish in school, but it's not something that I would do as a normal thing. And I
Hmm.
certainly would not sing in public because I have a horrible singing voice. But that's definitely something that I was doing. And then I was transferred to a psychiatric hospital. But
Okay.
of course, no dedicated maternal
Mm-hmm.
postpartum wing. So it was general area. First, it was, I was not my choice. I was committed, But then after a couple of days, I was able to say, yes, I needed to be there and
Yeah.
consent to being kept for another few days. Um, but again, if you don't have any personal experience with a psychiatric hospital, then I feel like you rely on movies and
Mm.
TV, which can exacerbate certain things like paranoia or fear that you're going to be medicated a certain way or they're not telling you the truth.
Mm.
And there are also individuals in there that are actually suffering from paranoia. So that can feed into the thoughts that you might have. And without a dedicated postpartum or maternal wing. So, like I said, I had been slowing down on breastfeeding, but I still needed to pump. My
Yeah.
husband had to bring, this was like a logistical scenario, that he had to bring the pump and I had to sit in this small room with a nurse to just express milk so
Mm.
that, I wouldn't be in pain. So it was difficult. Phone calls and visits from family and phone calls with friends, that was helpful in the
Okay.
immediate time that I was there. And then being able to stay at home for a little bit. But I was really only away from work for 2 weeks.
Whoa.
Again, difficult manager, difficult human resources department. I requested to be able to work from home more, again, because
Mm-hmm.
of the length of commute, and it was denied
Oh,
be able to do that. So, yeah.
yeah. Must have been difficult. Yeah, because my recovery was, I was on mat leave. Well, in Canada, it's longer. Like
Yeah.
we can have up to a year.
Yeah.
So it helped in the recovery. And my husband was working from home. So, but when I read that article, when you mentioned that you went back to work, I was like, oh wow, this is quite something. So it must have been very hard for you.
Well, and the kicker in this country is it's a financial burden for
Mm-hmm.
families. And so with maternity leave, if you will, being
Yeah.
coupled in with short-term disability as a policy, um, my short-term disability had been used up by
Mm.
delivery and birth of my daughter.
Wow.
So when I go back in for a postpartum issue to a psychiatric hospital, there's no more short-term disability. You can't like double dip. And so it was, yeah, go back to work or find another job.
Wow.
So,
It's quite different. Quite something. So
yeah.
you mentioned that psychotherapists and a psychiatrist, so
Mhm.
must have helped as well
Yes.
to
So
support you.
they were both great. It was referrals from the psychiatric hospital, and they were in my county, and there were several locations within the county in the state of Virginia. And the therapist was very helpful. I'm thinking maybe I continued to see her for about 6 to 8 months
Okay.
afterwards, and the psychiatrist for a few years, I would say.
Hmm.
Um, you know, more regular at first, and then getting down to like 3 or 4 times a year for medication maintenance.
Yeah.
And again, he was the one that gave me the subsequent bipolar disorder diagnosis, as well as with the medication that I was put on in the psychiatric hospital. It was made me very tired, like just
Mhm.
drag out, could not move, tired. They tried another medication. So this incident happened in October. So by Thanksgiving, end of November, I was back in the emergency room because the second medication made me so depressed.
Oh no.
So yeah.
Wow.
No, no.
So it took a few trials with medication to find the
Right.
right one and to find the right balance.
Right. And then it was back to the original, just a much lower dosage.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
And then, so you're still on medication, or yeah?
Still on medication. Once I moved out of Virginia, I could no longer see that psychiatrist.
Okay.
Because again, they were associated with the county.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing medication maintenance through my primary care physician for
Okay.
several years. And then probably about 3 years ago, I made a decision to revisit the whole medication and diagnosis, because they also diagnosed me with ADHD,
Oh,
and
okay.
I'm on a medication for that as well. And so I found a psychiatrist who basically ended up going old school, and I was weaned off both medications and then put on a sort of a old school medication that's been around for a long time. So
Okay.
yeah, and that's been much more manageable.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay. I see. So, has there been a time when you experience either like stigma or feel shame about what you've been through?
so that's been a journey in
Mm-hmm.
itself. Of the first year is just basically shock and just trying to absorb what's happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think psychosis is a very scary thing because we always think that we can at least trust our own brains, right? Or trust
Yeah.
ourselves. You may not be able to trust other people all the time and what they're telling you, but of course you can trust yourself. So what happens when your brain like defies you and you're not sure if what it's telling you is real information anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the first year was rough. I tried to write down my story as much as possible,
Mm-hmm.
just to have it. And then probably 2 years afterwards, I participated a lot with a group, a national or global organization called Toastmasters, which is about public speaking. Yeah. And because I was very shy growing up. And then once I got out of college and got into business, I just wanted to be able to speak in public. So I maintained that. And I signed up to do a presentation, sort of like mini TED Talk called Ignite in Washington, D.C. And people are given 5 minutes, and then their slides rotate every 15 seconds, whether you're ready for it or not.
Okay.
And it can be on any topic you want. And it's a lot of times usually motivational or funny or like, educational in some way. Sometimes serious topics. I did see a couple that were very serious topics. So I decided to speak in public, but kind of couch it under the topic of help.
Okay.
So not really get into the details of exactly what had happened, but just that it's very important to help others, to accept help,
Mm-hmm.
Part of the thing leading up to this scenario was the lengthy commute, the difficult boss,
Yeah.
all the 2 kids and marriage and house and, knowing when to ask for help to get through things is important. So yeah, I got up and spoke in front of like 300 people, strangers. And it was the most cathartic thing I've ever experienced. I mean, I got off the stage, I made it off the stage, saw a couple people I knew, got hugs, and just started bawling.
Aw.
Yeah, so, and the gentleman that organized the whole event said it was one of the best Ignite speeches he's ever seen while doing that. So that gave me confidence. All of the feedback from that. Strangers coming up to me afterwards saying, my mother suffered from depression, or even men coming up and sharing things, which you didn't think that you would connect
Mm-hmm.
men on the same level, but it's all mental health. It's all
Yeah.
personal experience. So it was a really rewarding experience. So.
I don't understand because I decided to be quite open about it from the beginning, like my recovery is a bit different than yours, in the sense that right away I felt like I want to share my story. I want to share my story, even though I didn't feel confident in myself. In this, like you said, I trust my brain. That has been really hard. And will I be myself again? That desire to help and share the story was there as as soon as I got the diagnosis. So I think that at the beginning it was more like my manic
Yeah.
episode that was like making me, but I am naturally a woman that likes to help. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe it was, emphasis was even more because of my manic episode. What I've
Yeah.
noticed, all that to say, is that when I share my story, I'm open about it, people come to me. People say,
Yeah.
hey, I've experienced this, or I haven't told anyone, but I feel like I can tell you. Or so, yeah, that's what I've noticed. Even like friends or colleagues at work, I've been open at work. I decided personally that I would be open about it. And
Mm-hmm.
then I've had colleagues coming, not experiencing the same thing, but mental health,
Yeah.
and just talking to me about it and say, hey, I experienced this or that. I don't really talk about it, but they felt comfortable talking to me. And as you say, it's rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
And we realize that, hey, we need to talk about this more. So because there is stigma, people don't want to talk about it. And
Right. Right.
yeah, so
Yeah. I think so. When I first shared it, it was on a blog, postpartum depression focused blog, and I just shared my first name only. But at the same time as that was happening, and just before the Ignite speech, I was working for a small government consulting firm and going through a process of getting clearance. And so there's a lot of background investigation into you, including whether or not you've seen a therapist or a psychiatrist in the last 5 years, and if you're on medication and things like that. And so I was like weighing, is it worth it, to do this publicly?
mm-hmm.
So publicly, or just keep it to myself. And I thought it needed to be, for me, it needed to be a public thing too, because like I said, I was still here. I had survived. And given my public speaking experience, I knew I could do it. I could get up there and do it. And so I've always also said, you don't have to get up in front of 300 strangers to share your story, but share with someone that you trust, because if you keep it inside you, it's like a weight, it just, it can eat you alive if you don't get some of that story, your experience, your own voice out.
Yeah.
So
Yes. And seeing a therapist too is a very good idea. Like go through all, like for me, I had a psychiatrist, like mostly for medication and I'm actually still seeing him, but it will stop. My last one will be actually in June, and after it will be my family doctor who will take over because there's a long waiting list, and I've been seeing my psychiatrist for 9 years, but now I haven't had any relapse recently on anything. So it's like there are some people that need, and so I'm fine with that. But looking back, I haven't seen a therapist, and looking back, I'm like, maybe it would have been a good idea. Like the recovery was somehow not too difficult for me, but I think it would have been helpful,
yeah,
to go see a therapist. And after that, like even recently, I've had anxiety because with my bipolar, what happened is that I started having more anxiety as well. So it's sometimes related with bipolar having anxiety. And so yes, I've been through a rough time last fall, and I decided, hey, you know what? Let's go see a therapist. And he's been
yeah.
very helpful and giving me some strategies. So um, there's no shame in
Wow.
going to see a therapist, and she's helped me. So that's why I'm thinking, oh, maybe it would have been even more helpful during my recovery to have, a therapist and talk to.
I had one therapist. Like I said, in 2016, I wanted to revisit the whole topic. So I found a new therapist, I found a new psychiatrist, and it's been very helpful, to revisit the whole topic altogether. But I had a therapist that she talked about having young folks, like children or teens or whatever. You go to your primary care doctor on an annual basis for a checkup, right? Whether you're sick or not.
Yeah.
But we never do that on the mental health side. You only go basically when you're in crisis, right?
Right.
And so your first introduction is when it's a crisis scenario, not like, oh, I know this person. I've been going to this person for 10 years. We just talk and check in on an annual basis. And now I actually just need some help. Like what if we did the same thing
Interesting.
on the mental health side?
You're right.
So,
Yes. we wait until it's a crisis.
Right.
So, and even then, like, we feel like, oh, like even me, I was like, should I go? Should I not? Maybe I can do it on my own. I have a few strategies, but then I
Mhm.
said, no, do it. Like,
Yeah.
just do it. And it's been helpful.
Yeah.
So going through a difficult experience such as a postpartum mood disorder has a big impact, like on the mother and her partner.
Mhm.
In what ways, I think you've talked about it a little bit, but in what ways would you say it has changed you?
Mm. Changed me or changed like my relationship or
No, well, we can talk about the partner as well if you want, but maybe
just
first how it has changed you, and maybe after the impact it had, of course, on your partner, because yeah, there is impact on the partner as well. It's
mm.
going through such a difficult situation.
I think it certainly put a lot of things in perspective for me.
Hmm.
As I've mentioned, I had a very lengthy commute. I had a very difficult boss to the point like I work in a creative industry and I would suggest and have all these ideas, not the manic ideas, but just on a regular basis, my own creative ideas. And I would get no's, no, no, we can't do it because of this. No, and being micromanaged and just, it was almost emotional abuse in the
Hmm.
workplace. And it made me question myself. And then after this scenario, I noticed it in my work life, in my personal life, family relationships, is that there were, with family and relationships, no expectations, right? Whatever you get is good. But with work, it's like nothing is that important at work anymore. Like, it's not worth it.
Hmm.
Is this going to matter a year from now? And I'm not stressing myself out to that degree for anyone
Okay.
anymore. So that was a good, positive outcome.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think I did struggle, like I said, with that first year of finding what the new normal was and trusting myself. And I could see when my parents visited, my mom would talk about how the medication gave me almost like dead eyes,
Oh.
that I was like zoned out kind of.
Hmm.
I worried about losing my sense of humor. That was in the immediate. Um, the experience with the medications and going through the depression, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's far worse than mania. I'll take mania any day over depression.
I know. Yeah.
Um, so it's just been a journey, and I think I learn each new experience, connection that I make. This is my brave connecting with
Yeah.
you, and now doing this has been, it just takes me to another level, I guess, of
Hmm.
understanding who I am and what mental health is for me and how I can help others. So
Yeah.
it's a journey.
Yeah. It is. It is. Yeah. I concur with you. Like, it's been a journey for me too, and yes, it has changed me in a good way. There are some, of course, having bipolar and having the anxiety with it, sometimes I find it difficult, like mostly the anxiety part of it. But there's part of me was like, "Oh, I wish, I didn't have that. I wish." But at the same time, it makes me understand other people that are going through the same thing. And
Mhm.
there's that aspect of compassion or understanding that not that I was not compassionate before, but now I can understand more what
Mhm.
they're going through. And then my husband has, you have an interview with him on my YouTube channel. But I don't know if we mentioned it in the interview, but he has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder 3 years after me.
Mm.
And so it really helped me to support him better too, because I had been through, him was more depression,
Mhm.
but I had a little bit of depression too, like a few months after my manic episode. So I knew what it's like to feel depressed. It helped me, but yeah, that's part of the change I've experienced. And after, like, in my own life, like being really into projects to help families, like to be out there and to physically and in my life, everyday life, try to help families and switch career, and it
Mhm.
had a big impact on my life.
Yeah.
Yes, so it's a journey, and it's not over. We'll see
No,
what is gonna happen.
isn't that the great part?
And how about your partner?
Mm.
How was it for him? Because this is like I had an interview with my husband, and it was hard for him, especially at the beginning when he couldn't recognize me, and he cried. He find it like difficult. He had some friends, like a friend that he could talk to,
Mm-hmm.
but yes, it had an impact on him. So I'm wondering, yeah, how was it for your partner?
So, I mean, I, we've never really talked about what he felt like in
Mm-hmm.
those few moments after, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just, I know it was extremely hard. I know when he showed up on the scene, actually, I lost it again. I thought I was God and he was the devil, so I didn't want to be anywhere near him. Um, So when he got to the hospital and they told him they had given me like Haldol, to knock me out, and they're like, she should basically wake up and be, more sedated, obviously more normal.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I woke up and I was still like screaming
Mm.
and really out of it. And so they had to hit me with a second dose. And so I think he panicked as to whether or not I was going to come back to him in any way that he had known me.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, we talked though how he didn't put a lot of stock into mental health, mental illness, mental health issues
Hmm.
prior to this. Anxiety is like, just suck it up. Like, it's not a real. And having seen the physical manifestation of something so severe in someone that he knew, and he knew my normal character, it was a realization of like, no, this is definitely something that people struggle with. It's a real thing, and I think that opened his eyes to a lot of different things,
Hmm.
both for my experience and for just people in general. So,
What advice would you give to mothers and their partner going through the challenging experience of postpartum psychosis? Do you have any advice or suggestions?
I think we've covered a lot of it. Definitely seek
Yeah.
community support, therapy, medication if that's something that is necessary or needed for you. And if you can find someone to trust, like I said, you don't have to stand up and tell 300 strangers,
Mm-hmm.
but if you can find a way to talk about it with someone that you trust, for some it would be, the church, community, friends, family, or if you can just write it. Like, if you're not ready to verbally share it, write down what you are thinking, both of
Mm-hmm.
you. If you can share your own written thoughts with each other, if you're not ready to voice them, and just be open, I guess, and patient with ourselves and each other. I think that's really important.
Yes. Yes, I think it's important. And in the recovery process, like I know that some days I was feeling better. Whoops, other days I was not feeling good. So it's not like when we start feeling better, that doesn't mean that it will always go up. Like we can have days where like not necessarily that the psychosis symptoms will come back, but you're not. I know for me, like some days I was feeling my concentration was extremely low. Like I couldn't concentrate. I didn't have confidence in myself. And other days I was feeling more, oh, okay, it feels better. So we had to be patient. We had to wait. It took a while.
Yeah,
So
that's
patience is important.
that's the big thing. I think my husband is very he's really able now to tell when things are a little bit off or going in a different direction for me, and he'll ask me the questions that need to be
Good.
asked, and I can be honest with him. But I think I put it in my "This is my brave" speech about like with my parents, especially my mother. Like, I can't say I've had a bad day sometimes because there's that worry,
Oh, okay.
like, is she going down? Is this a spiral? Like,
Hmm.
where's this going? And it's like, it's just a bad day. But like, I can't just have a bad day like that,
Uh-huh.
anymore.
Yeah.
It's gotta like baby step in how you say what's going on, right?
Yes. And I
Yeah.
remember at the beginning, those days where I was not feeling,
Yeah.
I was worried. I was, oh no, am I,
Yeah.
down again? It was scary. But now today, I mean, I haven't had any relapse, but I did have some mood swings once in a
Mm-hmm.
while when you said the sleep is so important. And then
Mm-hmm.
when I don't respect my sleep and, more stress at work, well, I experience a little bit of mood swings. And I remember, oh, when you're a little bit on the high, hoo-hoo, it's good ideas, creative and everything. But when you hit those 2 days of depression, kind of feeling more depressed after, it was not fun. So
Yeah.
I know, like I can tell now, and my husband can tell as well, and I'm really open with him, so it doesn't scare me. Like I know, like if it lasts longer than a few days, then there will be something to worry about. Like that's what my psychiatrist said. Like if it's 1 or 2 days, and then 1 or 2 days, but if it's more, of course, like I have to contact him or
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
something about it. But I know the symptoms well enough, my husband too, and yeah, my psychiatrist knows me too. Like I think knows exactly like what would be bad for me, like if I keep on going a certain way.
Right.
Yeah. So have you had like any other hospitalization, or are you more stable, or
Like I said, I was back in the emergency room
yeah,
because of the depression.
yeah.
And after that, you talk about like sort of the mood and maybe going up. I can remember, a couple days where I thought the radio was like playing certain songs just for me. Kind of thoughts
Oh,
popped into
okay.
my head and being like, no, this isn't good. And like, or
Mm,
having to avoid certain sci-fi shows I enjoy watching with my husband because it was just hitting too close to home.
okay.
So there've been some of that anxiety as
Mm,
reared its head in different ways. I had that in college, and I would just listen to a meditative CD, and no real flare-ups up until from college till so it's probably 12-year span when my daughter was born. But driving on bridges now has become more of a
oh,
thing where I can feel my heart race and have to breathe or focus on something. And it's gotten to the point where now sometimes I'll have my husband take the bridge
hmm,
shift. And it was never an issue
hmm,
for me before. I had a therapist tell me, to try and sing a song that because it'll take your mind out of the moment. And then I did have, again, when you start feeling good for a while and you think, oh, maybe I don't need this medication, I kind of lapsed. I'd had like a makeover, and I missed a few days of my meds, and then had the first panic attack I'd ever had in my whole entire life. And yeah, I literally thought I was going to die. It was like
hmm,
pouring rain. We had to go pick up my son from school. I made my husband drive, and I swore we were just going to like crash. And
hmm.
and yeah, so take your meds.
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yes,
but yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
I've tried too. Like even like my psychiatrist at some point, I don't know, it was like 4 years, 3 years after my hospitalization, said, oh, maybe we can try like to go
mm,
off. And then we try, but symptoms that appear was anxiety, like bad anxiety. So like,
mhm.
okay, no, you know what? I cannot go off. Like yes, it's a mood stabilizer, but it also helps in a certain way to control my anxiety. So
Yeah.
that's why we figured that, it's going to be there for a while, for maybe the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's okay. I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
It
It took
helps. So.
took me a while to come to terms with that.
Mm.
The idea of being on medicine for the rest of my life. But yeah.
When it helps.
hmm
Yeah. Any other thing that you would like to say or share?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for
Okay.
reaching out after having met me so many years ago.
I
It's been,
know, like you talked about that. This is my brave, or maybe people listening to us don't know
yeah,
what it is. So can you
I
say a little
should.
bit what it is?
Oh, so This Is My Brave is a nonprofit organization. It was started by Jen Marshall and Anne Marie Ames, and it was to give people with mental health issues, mental illness, or who have friends and family that suffer from mental illness, a voice, a platform to share their stories, their
Mm,
experiences, whether it's through music, song, personal essays, rap, whatever, however they want to share it. And so Jen always says, right now it's to erase the stigma
mhm,
around talking about these things. And so right now it's brave to get up there and share our stories. And one day it won't be considered brave, it'll just be considered talking. And then she says she'll have to rebrand.
You're right. Yeah.
So,
Oh,
but I
yeah.
hope we get there.
Yeah. So actually, I met you the first show that they did. We drove. I don't know. I think I found her website, her blog. I was reading her blog,
Mm-hmm.
and then yeah, she started talking about it. So my husband was like, "Let's go! Like, let's go to the U.S. and go see the show." Like, we really wanted to be there. I remember listening to your speech, and really moved me, because I was like, what if, like, yes, I had psychotic symptoms, but I didn't go that. It was different symptoms, like it was delusions, and I had hallucinations too, but it didn't get to that. But it made me really feel like, oh my gosh, like maybe, I could have been
Mm-hmm.
like you, who know? And I was really moved, and I found it really brave of you to talk into your story. But yeah, when I started my YouTube channel, I thought, I want to talk to Heather and, have
I'm,
a
I'm
have her
so glad you
story.
reached out. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy I did.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You like my videos? And you care about my mission to speak openly about postpartum mental health? You can help me make it happen by subscribing to my channel and sharing my videos with others. Just click on subscribe. I also created a Patreon account to help you contribute directly to my mission. Interested? Just click on the link below my video, which will direct you to my Patreon page. Then, click on Become a Patron and join my exclusive community. Thanks to you, I can continue to invest time and energy to produce and then present you quality videos on a regular basis. Do not forget to take a look at the benefits you can get in exchange. I thank you for your interest in my channel, and I'm already grateful to you for taking the time to look at its content and share it with others.